A successful writer and his best friend. They grow up in a small town together. The successful writer moves away, becomes a big success in a big city. The best friend stays behind and takes care of his father's bookstore.
And the theme of that show about sort of one person having a profound effect on another person is what happens here. It kind of, without really even knowing it, this friendship ends up having repercussions throughout both their lives. We kind of realized there was a bit of a theme in all of our writing, especially when we were putting this kind of compendium of stuff together to work with students. We kind of realized that was a bit of a theme for us too.
And speaking of students and that theme, the next song you're going to hear a little bit of both in that. And Neil is going to sing Mrs. Remington for you.
My mom passed away in the summer I turned 6 and left a single father and his son. But Dad had the bookstore with a leaky roof to fix, so I was on my own, facing the unknown, the terrifying prospect of grade 1. But at the time, how was I to see? A kind and gentle soul was waiting there for me. Mrs. Remington, our first grade teacher, made elementary school a better place. But her single most disturbing feature was the coarse black hair on her face. Maybe she was menopausal, lack of estrogen will cause a lot of odd conditions, some acute. The irony would never phase her, namesake of a famous razor, and to be so facially her suit. And Mrs. Remington smiled, and she would brighten my day. Back then, a teacher hugged you to make you feel okay, and though my face sort of stung from Mrs. Remington's beard, when she held me, my problems disappeared. Mrs. Lynch was an ignoramus, Mr. Pollock was just plain mean. Mrs. Remington was nearly famous for her parties at Halloween. Pumpkin heads of every shape were cut out of construction paper, each and every one would be displayed. The highlight for the children was to make a really special costume for the yearly Halloween parade. Mrs. Remington smiled, and she was clearly content, as she lovingly presided over this, the main event. So we'd nervously walk past her critical eyes, and we'd vie for Mrs. Remington's top prize. Well, there was this one guy wearing cardboard wings, a coat hanger halo, carrying a bell, and a homemade book that said Tom Sawyer. Nobody had a clue what he was supposed to be, except me. Oh, Mrs. Remington. Pamela Cochan thought he was the Statue of Liberty. Mrs. Remington, I know. Donnie Carter thought he was a Thanksgiving turkey. Mrs. Remington, I know. He's Clarence, the angel from It's a Wonderful Life. He was my mother's favorite. The class laughed. I cried, and Mrs. Remington announced that I was next. But Mrs. Remington smiled in that way that she had, a smile that made you realize that things were not so bad, and I knew from her face that this feeling would pass. So I went to take my turn before the class. Well, those poor kids were still trying to figure out who the heck Clarence was when I shuffled onto the platform in fuzzy slippers and bathrobe with pink sponge curlers in my hair. Alvin Kelby, Mrs. Remington said. And what are you supposed to be? I'm a ghost. The ghost of my mother. Once that day was awful lonely, sitting by myself and only wearing fuzzy slippers and chenille. While all the kids were making fun, in came Mrs. Remington with Clarence dragging slowly on her heel. Clarence, she said, I'd like you to meet Mrs. Kelby. She's a big fan of yours. And Mrs. Remington smiled, because Mrs. Remington knew that the battlefield of childhood was easier with two. Mrs. Remington watched as the angels do, and on Halloween that year, she saw two masks disappear when my mother met her angel.